right, welcome back to a special episode of the Life and Faith podcast. With us today is author and good friend, Doug Smith. Say hi, Doug.
Hey, good to be here with you, Dan and Josh. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're happy to see you.
Glad to have you.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely. Your book is called Unintentional: How Screens Secretly Shape Our Desires and How You Can Break Free.
That's right.
And what a great book.
Thank you.
It was really great. I listened to it the first time some time ago, and I listened to it again in preparation for this podcast because I was like, I knew what was in it, but I was excited to talk about it again, and I just wanted to refresh my memory, so I'm definitely excited. Would you be willing to just give us kind of a summary or sort of give us the idea of the book or the message of the book?
Sure. Well, it's called Unintentional because most people are unintentional in the way that they adopt technology today. Most of us, when you start looking at statistics on usage of technology, it's staggering. The average person spends 8 hours a day consuming digital media. This is like social media, video games, streaming video, entertainment media of various kinds. 8 hours a day. So 56 hours a week. And but they didn't get there on purpose. Nobody set out to spend all this time, the equivalent of more than a full-time job, using their technology. So why do they do that? Well, it's because the industry makes their products intentionally addictive. So most people are unintentional. The industry is intentional. And my book is to help people flip that intentionality imbalance and become more intentional with their lives than the biggest and most powerful corporations in the world.
Yeah, and you wrote that in 2018.
I wrote the first edition in 2018. The second edition that is 2021.
2021. Okay.
Yep. So it's been updated a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you that a little bit later if you intend to update it for sort of, because in the book you talk about the state of things, and I think it's just growing like a pulsating monster a bit, and so I'm wondering sort of if you just go every so often I gotta rewrite this part, I gotta say something more about this.
Absolutely. Pulsating monster is a great visual. Yeah, I do. And it needs it, but because I did write it intentionally to be more perennial, to have more of a to have less. I mean, there's statistics, there's obviously technology changes a lot, but the solution part of the book shouldn't have to change too much. It applies to us pretty much wherever we are and whenever it happens, whenever people read it.
Yeah, I think so. I've been thinking about this subject too, where in the context of our church is currently praying about a building project, and they were talking about ways that you can support other than just giving. You can also have fasting, and but we talked about recently how in this day and age, almost as much as food can be a temptation or a distraction, if you will, media use can be a distraction. So I just think that goes like from what I've read here, it's just it's along those same lines.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So before we get into sort of more of the content of the book, I thought it would be a good idea to give a little primer on who you are, just a little bit about you. I just want to go over a few things, and you can tell me if this is correct, okay?
Sure.
So first and foremost, blood-bought son of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Right?
Yes, sir.
You are a husband?
Yes.
Father?
Yes.
Grandfather?
Oh, yes.
Author?
Yes.
Musician?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And somewhere way down the line, software developer.
That's right. That's how I pay the bills.
That's how you pay the bills.
Yep.
So which of those is most fun?
Oh, wow. Grandfather.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Best way to have kids ever.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, totally.
Get to send them home, right? At the end of the day.
Right. And yes, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And they're so excited to see you when they come over. And yeah, it's the best. It's the best. Yeah. I just had a visit with grandkids that are out of town. And at the end of the visit, oldest grandson said, I'm locking the door so you have to stay here forever.
Aw.
That's
Oh.
fun.
That's the
Yeah.
best part, huh?
Yeah. None of our kids ever said that to me. So
Yeah.
My sister-in-law and brother-in-law just had a baby, and we go over to see him, and I'll hold him and I'll go, "Who's your favorite uncle?"
right.
Uncle D.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm brainwashing him early.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Propaganda.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I need to do.
Mhm.
Okay. So so over the course, just talking about the book real quick, there's kind of 3 sections to the book, right? There's a beginning section talking about what the problem is, the middle section talking about sort of the source of the problem or sort of the spiritual aspect of it, and the third part is like what do we do from here,
That's right.
right? So the first part, you say this quote, and I love this quote. It says, "They start with the lie," they being people that would seek to manipulate us.
Mhm.
They start with the lie that our desires, our feelings, are the truest part of who we are, our very identity. Then they deploy a global infrastructure to create the desires they want us to have. They tell us we should act on our desires, then shape our desires to make us want what they want us to want.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on that? What's the lie at the center of that? And sort of how do we get out of that cycle? I mean, that's sort of the book, but it's like...
I'm so glad you brought that up, Dan. Yeah, that is, I call it the double bind. It's a 1-2 punch. It's the mechanisms that the industry uses to shape our desires are based on this lie. And because the lie is your feelings are the truest part of who you are. How you feel right now should determine what you do. But we all know when we think about it that how we feel changes all the time. Tastes and preferences and things like that. Just like I didn't used to like broccoli as a kid, and now I love it. Right. So, I mean, how we feel, what we desire, what we want, is obviously mutable, but it's not. When you think about the slogans, just do it, have it your way, just all the things. Those are the kind of slogans. But then, right, the industry is, with the technology we have today, we can measure the shaping of desires. The industry can measure the shaping of desires to the millisecond, the nanosecond level, and try experiments, thousands of experiments on us to literally manipulate us into wanting what they want us to want. So we're, and that is a tongue twister, right? We make us want what they want us to want. So if you want to change someone's decisions, and you want to, making an argument, talking them into something is a lot more difficult than making them feel like they want that. So, and even the menu of possible options is controlled. Like, sure, it's okay if you pick among these 5 choices, because those 5 choices are all going to win for the industry.
Yeah.
And usually at our expense. So yeah, that is the lie. The lie is that what you feel like doing is the truest part of who you are, and here's what you should feel like doing. Isn't that convenient? But we know in the scriptures, acting on our feelings, doing what we feel like doing, leads us. Our hearts are deceitfully wicked. Hearts are deceitfully wicked. We can be easily deceived so much. You look at the book of Proverbs and all the things about what the foolish person does, what the simple person does. They're led by their desires. They see this shiny object. They see this alluring whatever, and they go that direction. But the Bible has all these ways of becoming wise, not using your feelings, using the scriptures, scripture-informed reason to make wise decisions. And that's really where my book starts going, in that direction, to help us learn not to be led by our feelings, but by scripture-informed reason.
So the catalyst for this message, though, really is the rise of technology, right? Because that was written about the human heart before technology was. So would you be, you know what I mean? It's like the catalyst is that technology has gotten to where it is, because the human heart has always sort of wanted to, I guess, go against what God's idea is for our lives, right? So
Sure.
We've wanted to be defined by our other things. God has said you're spiritually defined, right? So
yes,
it's technology's rise or the way the particular insidiousness of it that made you want to begin to tell this to people, to say this to people, right? If that makes sense.
Yes, that's so true. I mean, we have been going astray as long as Adam and Eve, right? As long as, we've been tempted to go astray.
Mm-hmm.
The difference with today's technology is that it's a global unification of these manipulative technologies. It's not like one temptation of that works in some small town in this city with these versus these African villagers that have no technology. I mean, we're all being tempted and led astray, right? There's all kinds of ways, but there's never before been you could manipulate billions of people to be to go in the shape of their feelings, so that people become trillionaires or companies become $1 trillion companies by the manipulation of literally half the globe or more, right? That's what's new and what I want people to understand.
Yeah, that's imagine making that exorbitant amount of money off of the suffering really of people. And it's oftentimes a silent suffering because they don't even realize how much they're being manipulated, but it's off of manipulation. That's just, it's hard to even comprehend that.
It's well said.
And one thing that I was thinking of earlier when you were talking about just the way that technology grabs people, it makes them believe that they need to do things a certain way, convinces you of that. So I was thinking about, in Judges, when it talks about how the judges had to come on the scene, there's that line where the Bible says they did that which was right in their own eyes. Everyone did that. And now I feel like almost you compound that with, you can almost say in this technology day and age, everyone does what is right in the eyes of their technology masters,
right?
In a way.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that is exactly right. Yeah. There's this, the technology masters create this consensus of what people should be doing, what's important to everybody, what should we be laughing at now, what should we be wearing now, what should we be mad about now, especially, how should we be divided as a society now,
right?
How should we be reacting whenever somebody sends something we disagree with? Well, we know we're trained to react. How are we trained to react? In 5 seconds, you say the most harsh, outrageous thing you can possibly say in social media, because that's what we've been discipled into doing. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that is what's right in our own eyes because of how we've been trained or discipled by the technologies.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And you kind of buy the illusion that you're going to do better if you know what I mean? You're going to make change if you do that. Some people, if they're okay, speaking from experience, I would think that what I'm about to say is going to change this person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an illusion because it literally never did.
Right.
Not one. I've been in hundreds of, arguments, but not one time did somebody go, you know what? You got a point.
Yeah. Well, I thought about it before, and maybe we've had this conversation before, Dan, where if you think about it, if instead of social media, you just go back to where you had to be in a public sphere, imagine somebody getting up on this podium and talking into a microphone that had a loudspeaker over the masses and then firing away what people fire away on social media and those things.
Right.
You just wouldn't do it the same way. Like maybe some really emboldened people could, but it's just the masses of people wouldn't do it. But you say things that you wouldn't normally say when you're in that, what feels like privacy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can't remember many interactions that were really great, but I can remember a bunch of instances where people stopped being friends or worked together and had beef or whatever over something that happened on social media.
Oh yes.
Yep.
And that is all by design. I just again want to say that's not by accident. The algorithm optimizes for outrage.
Yeah.
Like that is the most profitable because it's profitable for us to stay engaged.
Yes.
And so it's and I document this in my book. My book has 179 footnotes of all the documentation because as I was writing the book, my critique partners would say, back that up. How can you say that? And it's like, no. They do it on purpose. They've told us they're doing it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
We're still going along with it anyway.
The studies show
people
react to those things emotionally. That's what gets the views. All that.
That's right.
You said in the book, these companies value our time more than we do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Kind of relating to what you're saying. what is the intentionality imbalance? I think you had mentioned it earlier, but can you go into more detail about what that exactly is?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We pass the time doing things that if we really thought about it, we just wouldn't do it. How many times have you picked up and looked at, I have a couple minutes. I'm just going to see what's going on X social media platform. And you look up a half an hour later, I'm just going to watch one show, and you end up watching 4.
Yeah.
Again, that's an intentionality imbalance in that we might have meant to, I'll have a couple minutes. I should really do this important thing that I really care about. I'm not getting to my list. Gosh, I really should do this, but I just have a couple minutes. I'll just take a little break. That whole activity, that whole idea of I have a couple minutes, therefore X, fill in the blank. That filling in the blank is the intentionality imbalance. The industry fills in that blank for us.
Yeah.
I'm bored, therefore Twitter. I'm lonely, therefore TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I'm, so the therefore is the intentionality imbalance. What I encourage in my book is that people need to take that back. And that's where I say that by not taking it back, we're saying the most powerful corporations in the world care more about our time than we do.
Yeah.
And we let them decide for us.
Mm.
There's even a setting on Netflix, I guess. I don't have Netflix, but there's a setting on Netflix that says play something. That was a recently added feature. So it's not just autoplay isn't good enough. Now I don't even have to pick the show. It's like, you've seen what I and people like me want to watch. I can't even decide that. Just play something.
Yeah.
That is not intentional, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they designed that intentionally. Why?
Yeah.
Because they care about your time.
Can you elaborate a little bit on your distaste for the phrase binge watch?
Oh, yes. There's all kinds of things like that.
What do you like to binge watch?
We like to binge watch.
I don't like that
I
phrase.
feel like that's the only way that society accepts that word. Like, that wouldn't work in any other cases, but binge watching, suddenly that word's okay.
I'm binge eating pizza
Yeah.
Right.
for this weekend.
Well, it used to be, in terms of like eating disorder diagnosis, that's the term, right? It's just like, and even the word addiction is bandied about like, this game is so good, I was addicted in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Really? That's a selling feature? I just couldn't pull myself away.
They've rebranded words.
They have.
Yeah.
They've totally, and it's propaganda. I call it in my book. It's by saying it over and over and over again, binge watching, binge worthy, those phrases, it just drives me crazy because it's so bad, but we like celebrate it.
Yeah.
Like, that show was so good, I couldn't stop binging it. Wow.
Now I'm not watching it.
Right.
Yeah,
no, that's a
Yep.
downgrade. That is not, that means other things.
Yeah.
Words have meaning, believe it or not.
They do. They have meaning, but they have a community meaning. Like, yes, they do. And they should, but we have to realize again how intentionally they are shaped.
Right.
Yeah.
How even the vocabulary, if
The
you control
stigma
the
that's put on it.
vocabulary,
Yeah.
right. If you control the vocabulary, you control how we literally think about things.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, you talk about Aldous Huxley in
Mhm.
your book too, and I don't want to give too much away, but like we're looking at it not because it commands us to, but because it wants us, or because we want to out of our, we've been conditioned to do so.
Yeah.
We pay attention to the mass, to the pulsating,
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the reference to, the idea that that we talk about being afraid of Big Brother watching us all the time, and caring about what they're gonna hear us say something or whatever, or they were gonna keep us from doing something. But today instead we are so driven by our pleasures and by these addictive technologies that even if we had Bibles are illegal in many countries.
Yeah.
Not here. We have not in the United States. If you're listening in the United States, we've got, and the average listener probably has access to 50 Bibles if they really wanted to.
Yeah.
But we don't want to pick it up because we'd rather binge watch something, right? Because that's what, so that's the Aldous Huxley thing. It doesn't matter if the truth is sitting around us if we don't pick it up,
Yeah.
or if we don't even have the attention span. If we did, because our attention span has been obliterated by these algorithms
that we willingly went to.
that
Because
we were manipulated
in
into
a
doing
roundabout
it.
way, but
Correct.
yeah, we sort of willingly said,
We did. We surrendered
I'm
our
at a
will.
stoplight and I can't just sit there and be bored for 5 seconds. I have to I'm going to check, I see a little red dot. I'm going to check it.
Yep.
Yeah, there was this original promise with the advancement of technology, especially like 90s and early 2000s, of it's going to improve your life. It's going to make it better, information at your fingertips. And that's what I feel like sucks us all in. But like you're saying, it's just there's almost like an ecosystem now within digital media of likes and shares and views and all that stuff. So they reward the behavior, and then they create an addiction to it. So what started as maybe I mean, I can't say for sure, maybe a lot of the technology inventors, if you will say, had good intentions, but it was just quickly derailed by money and power. Yeah.
Right.
Do you think that's true, that they originally did have good intention with all this? I mean, how much of it were you aware of as it was sort of occurring?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Well, I've definitely watched it. I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing software engineering for a long time, almost over 30 years now. So I've watched it grow. I think that many people have, when you say good intentions, I guess, trying to be helpful with a profit motive. Not, I wouldn't, like when you say good intent, altruistic Christian intentions, probably not necessarily, but good, not nefarious. I'm going to, some of the quotes I have in chapter 3 of my book, where I talk about the people who, in their 20s, would be willing to work 20 hours a day for free beer and free pizza, coding away 80 hours a week, to make something cool and probably to try to be helpful. But then when they're in their 30s and they're having kids and they're seeing what the technology is doing to their kids, they start going, what did we do? Did we blow up are we blowing up people's brains? And that's where, they're quoted over and over again saying those kinds of things. So I don't know that they necessarily intended or saw that they were going to take over the entire world, like as an evil supervillain on some movie. It wasn't like that. But what tends to happen, I think, in technology is that we invent things and we have this ability now to do rapid experimentation, again, thousands and thousands of experiments. And then it goes, whoa, that works. Do that again. And whoa, now I'm a millionaire. Whoa, now I'm a billionaire. So the power of that. So, and then the little compromises and then the big compromises and then the selling of data and then wow, how can we get more and more and more? And then, then you end up here.
Yeah.
So I don't think they necessarily set out to do that, but they didn't also have the ethical background or the ethical underpinnings to really understand, the values that said, wait, we this is having a negative effect. Stop.
Yeah.
Because we know now from what they're also telling us that they did know. They have done studies. There's big studies that came out recently about how much Meta knew about the impact of Instagram on teen girls. It's eating disorders, it's anxiety, depression, suicidality, cutting, all the things. They know that, and it's a unfortunate side effect to them. They don't change their business model; they do what they do.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Let me ask you this. Are there other Christians in the software development world that you know of? I mean, is it a contingency of people that believe that happen to be? I mean, I feel like we live sort of here in, I don't want to say echo chamber, but like we interact with other Christians mostly.
Sure.
Especially like at church or when we get connected with people from church outside, like might go golfing or whatever. We go golfing with other Christians. We go do this. We have podcasts. We have podcasts with my Christian brother, Joshua, So in the software development world, are you connected with other Christians, or is there a lot of them, or is there not more than you think, less than you think, or?
Well, I think software development world is it's very broad, right? I think there are many. I would say there's lots and lots of Christians in the software development world. Are they in high positions of power in the most influential companies? When you think of Microsoft, Apple, Google, Facebook, TikTok, and so on. If there are, they're not having an influence on the behavior of the companies, right? But I'd say there probably are. I think, by and large, Silicon Valley is relatively anti-Christian as not necessarily, in an evil, nefarious way, but they're just not necessarily favorable to our values. You can kind of see that in the things they support generally. If you look at the causes that they fund or whatever, and the candidates that they support candidates on both sides, but that's a whole nother discussion. But so I would say there's a lot of Christian software developers in general, but whether our influence is really making a difference in terms of the direction of the major influential technologies, I think that's probably relatively low.
I see. Well, I guess because in the book, you tell the story about how you were saved at a very young age before you were a developer. So I figured I just wondered sort of how that culture sort of receives Christians, or do you know what I mean? I was just kind of curious because you would have seen that from the perspective of the Christian from the beginning.
That's true. Yeah. And I don't I don't think it's necessarily that software development as an industry is anti-Christian. I have worked in environments that weren't Christian environments and had, clients or whatever that would probably do things that I would prefer not to do. And I've had to excuse myself from those things as a Christian and say, I'm not going to do that job.
Yeah.
I'm not going to apply for that job. Where am I going to, it's like all of us with what we all have our gifts. We all have the things we do that we're good at. And we just decide we will deploy them here and not deploy them there.
Yeah.
And I've had to do that in my career as I've moved on. And those are hard decisions to make.
Yeah. Have you noticed any, this is kind of fast forwarding a bit, but have you noticed any sort of, so Josh and I have started this in the spring 20 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So what is it, like almost 6 months at least, or getting there. I don't know. Math is hard.
6 months. Yeah.
Yeah. 6 months. And
we
had started a Facebook group because we figured, we should connect with our listeners. So this is how we're doing it.
Sure.
Somebody posted pornography in our Facebook group.
No way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When they did, I said, I looked at it. I got the update. I look at it. It's nothing. I see nothing. A few days later, I get another notification. Turns out now there's 2.
Mm.
And so then I think that was when you saw it.
Yeah, it notified me.
You messaged me.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it again. I see the one from a few days before. I see the one from that day. I delete them both, block the person, and do all the blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
We felt it was a sign that we were doing something right.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, maybe we're not the biggest podcast, but we're getting a little bit of spiritual attack here.
Right.
That's how we define it.
Sure.
Right? Have you noticed your impact arguably larger, right? Have you noticed an uptick in spiritual attack or any kind of thing like that? Or
like personally, myself?
Yeah, personally, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Or maybe even just as the book is related, or
absolutely, yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's I found generally in my life that whenever I take a step of faith to try to take new steps beyond what I've done in the past, the spiritual resistance is very significant.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. I mean, for me, fear, anxiety, doubt, all those kinds of things about like, what are you like the time it took me 2.5 years to write the book, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, I was working contract work. And so things would happen where this contract fell through and now I have to, or whatever, there were lots of stresses like that. And then as I'm getting into it and as I'm learning more and I can't tell you the lies that I then started learning, like like you, I must be doing something right because I'm facing an unusual amount of resistance over and beyond what I typically do.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you to write a book like this? And what, and nobody's going to read it. Nobody wants to hear about this. And this is too big of a problem for you. And okay. And so I started getting in the mind in fact, one of my chapters is about renewing the mind, which has always been one of my practices that I've tried to develop, but I had to do it more and more and more to the point where I praise you, Lord, for your great and goodness that I'm being so attacked like right now. Yes. Thank you for this wonderful attack because like you said, I must be doing something right.
Yeah, that's kind of how we treated it, I think, in the moment. I was just glad that we were able to do something about it and that it was like, okay, people are going to understand we did not do this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? In that moment where I wasn't worried too much about our sort of like our reputation or how our podcast would be received or whatever, we got probably 85 or so people in that group, I would think.
Yeah.
And most of them are people who know you.
Yeah, and who knows, like, if they've interacted. Like, I've never heard anybody say that they saw anything, so I think it was real quick. I think it was quicker than we realized. It
Yeah,
was.
so we were in a good spot.
Yeah.
It could have been more devastating, I
Yeah.
think, than it was.
We
but-
learned a little something about privacy settings and Facebook and
Mhm.
all those things to make sure it
Moderation
doesn't
and all
happen
that.
anymore.
Yeah, yeah. So that brings up an interesting question. So how does that? How do you do promotion then? I mean, you don't do social media promotion. You don't have social media at all.
I do very little. I do have some social media. Some people who write books in the space do not. I have just a little bit of social media. And most of what I will post are things like get off social media, basically.
Yeah.
But I do have just a little bit. I probably get on social media for 5 minutes once every week or two.
Mhm.
So a very, very light user. So most of my promotion of what I do is things like this: podcast, speaking, real life interaction. And that's where I feel like I'm most effective anyway, because nobody knows, few people know who Doug Smith is. It's a very common name. And then when they hear the subject, they don't necessarily aren't attracted to it either, because most people want to be unintentional, and I don't have a problem. Those other people have a problem, and they don't want to hear about it. So but when they hear my heart for it, when they hear me speak about it, like when your listeners hear, they hear, well, he seems like, I guess he's kind of a decent guy, and he is a grandpa and a dad, and yeah, he's failed, and by the grace of God has gotten back up again, and he's sharing what he's learned, then they might say, hey, well, maybe he has something good to say. And that's, so me on social media is just not, I just can't in good conscience win at that.
Yeah.
Because I know what it takes to build up platform, quote unquote. I'm using scare quotes you can't see.
I do that all the time on the podcast.
Right.
I point
Yeah.
at something. I'm like, you can't see me pointing, but I'm pointing right now.
Yeah. So, because, in order to win on social media, you have to play by their rules.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
means at the end of the day, if I have 10,000 people, if I have 100,000 followers, I've manipulated 100,000 people to become my followers by exploiting them. Another, so I can't. I can't do that. But again, like I said, I do have just little tiny posts of things like, hey, here's this new article about why you should not buy Apple's Vision Pro, for example. I just wrote an article about that. And so that kind of stuff I'll just post once in a while, or I'll probably post about this podcast, that kind of stuff.
Vision Pro is Apple's version of the Oculus, is that right?
Right. Yeah. It's our new virtual augmented reality device.
Yeah. And just for the record, you shouldn't buy that because...
Well, it took 2,700 words to say why.
Yeah.
But basically what I would say, what I said in a nutshell is that it makes 4 false promises. And it's amazing, the false promises, the false vision, like, we can go into those a lot, but right.
Sure.
How it works is that it overlays your environment through the cameras so that you see the room through their mediated, like it looks like you're seeing through your eyes, but everything's mediated and basically airbrushed.
Yeah.
And then things are overlaid on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have this false vision. You have this false sense of, the one that really troubles me is this false sense of spirituality. They actually have, one of the things in the commercial is this woman meditating with these 3D graphics around her. And, I'm moving my arms in big ways.
Yeah.
But if you go look at the Vision Pro commercial that they produce, it's shocking how I say in my article that it's kind of like what a evil supervillain would create in some movie about how they're going to take over the world because they're controlling human interaction, relationships, mediating it all through everything that they do, this immersive experience, which as a technology nerd is like, whoa, that's amazing. Look at all that firepower that you're putting on your face and what they can do now. And then as a Christian and as I'm studying this, look how much better they're going to be able to manipulate us into making us think that this is how we should behave. False connection, false. So yeah, it's a bunch of lies. And I wouldn't spend $3,500. I wouldn't spend $35 on it.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious if you have, because something you said made me think of this. I'm curious if you've ever read the book Screwtape Letters.
That's one of my favorite books ever.
Okay. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that book as well. And I think there's a lot of people that read Chronicles of Narnia because that's very mainstream. A lot of people read that. That's great. But if you haven't read it, to all of our listeners, go and read Screwtape Letters, because it gets into this mindset of manipulation on a spiritual level. So we're bridging what we were talking about earlier with manipulation and talking about the spiritual level that Dan brought up, that spiritual attack. And one thing to be cognizant of is there really is like this a level that we cannot see that is warring for our souls. And if you think about the limitations of, because that's what the book is about, Screwtape Letters is about conversations from like an elder demon, if you will, to a younger demon, and with the mindset of how do we manipulate and just tear down people. And there's a turning point, I think, where we've lost the war because this individual has become a believer, but we can still like fight these battles every day and just make him as ineffective in his Christian life as possible.
Right.
I'm paraphrasing there, but that's basically that turning point in the book. And if you think about it, pairing what we're talking about here today in your book, the limitation is God is omnipresent, but there's limitation on these demonic forces where they're not omnipresent. They can only be in certain places at certain times. They can only have so much influence. But now if you're just influencing key people, like we're talking about the tech elites, and they're putting these things into like the what's it called, the Apple's version of Oculus, what's that called?
Oh yeah, Vision Pro.
Yeah, so the Vision Pro, things like that, then they can influence so many more people through the instrument of technology. It's really like, if you think about it that way, it's very sobering. So
it is. That's chapter 4 of my book is the spiritual side, and I do make that exact case, and I quote Screwtape Letters.
Oh, okay.
So it's so it's absolutely Jesus believed in spiritual warfare. It's not a popular subject.
Yeah.
It's and I go through that in my book. It's like, most people don't want to think about that. That's actually, there is this unseen world and this unseen battle for our hearts and minds, but it's extremely real. It's extremely effective. And that you're exactly right. And again, I don't think, here I can hear Dan maybe want to ask me, do I think the people intentionally want to serve the devil? And, is that what we're saying? No.
Yeah.
But what the case that I make in that chapter is that Jesus said that the devil is the father of lies in John 8:44. He is a liar and the father of lies. Father of lies. So if you trace back, the first lie in the Bible is,
hath God said?
Yeah, has God not said? Yeah, has God really said? And it was told by the devil, right? Mm-hmm. So the devil's the original liar. So what I make a claim is anytime you see a lie, you can always trace its DNA back to the father of lies. Mm. And then I list out all these lies that we believe, that this is what a woman should look like because this is how we've been programmed by our screens to look like, or this product will change your life because this, whatever, all those things, there's all these lies, the ways pharmaceuticals are promoted, in commercials, like those are these happy smiling people while you're saying this may cause death by painful, horrible things while people are playing on the beach. All of that. It's like, so it's, there is a spiritual battle for our hearts and minds, and it's so very much more effectively waged by our technology than at any other time.
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to make earlier, was advertisers have been lying about that long before everyone had a phone.
Absolutely.
Well, since phones were plugged into the wall.
Yes.
They have been lying. They've been saying potato chips will help you be able to dunk. But
right.
But it just doesn't, you know what I mean? It doesn't compute.
It's true.
But it's ramping up, right? It's like the intensity is getting bigger and bigger because of technology, because of the advancement, because of the rapid advancement of these new sort of like, they're capitalizing in ways that they're doubling down. They're capitalizing before we can even figure out what's going on.
Right. Mm-hmm. They have us off balance all the time.
Right.
Like, we know, most people, we all know about fake news. I talk about this in the book too. That's obviously fake news, there's lying, but trying to parse out what is fake news, you get to the point where I don't trust anybody, but then you have to read something. Yeah. And then what do you do? And then what do you do with that? So you have a combination of growing skepticism with a combination of growing propaganda.
Yeah.
And
Who's
it's
fact checking the fact checkers?
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it just enough to have one fact checker, or does the fact checker need to check the fact checker? And then who do you trust? And so it's a very, very challenging time to parse through all those things.
Yeah, indeed. You turned me on to the Pour Over.
Oh yeah.
Love the Pour Over.
Isn't that great?
I told him about it. Have you been
Mhm.
able to listen to it?
I have, yeah.
Yeah?
Because you were talking about it. I
So
gave it a listen.
cool. I just love it. It
Yeah.
says this is a big thing, but in the scale of eternity,
Yes.
it's not that big.
Right.
yeah.
You know, it's
That's like episode 1 of our podcast,
Yeah.
right? Like making big things, putting in the proper perspective is essentially what it was.
indeed, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. This is important. It's not God of the universe important.
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay? So,
Right.
so they'll often advertise on the Pour Over, they'll talk about Tuvu.
Yeah, that's right.
So, do you think that they say that's not curated?
Right.
So, do you feel that can be a potentially positive thing, or do you feel like that's still more the same? Or do you feel like that's like we're missing the point there? How do you feel about that concept of not curating what you're
Right.
what you're reading?
That's a good question. So Tuvu is a paid for social media platform where the users pay a subscription fee. So basically what the phrase is that I quote in the book is, if you're not paying for it, you are the product.
Mhm.
And so we're in free social media, quote unquote, we're being sold to the advertisers.
Yes.
On a paid for service like Tuvu, we're paying for the service.
Mhm.
So you're right. So then there's not an algorithm that's trying to keep us hooked. That is actually designed to get in and get out and see things in chronological order. I think there's a lot of value there. And I think, I think it's good. I think that is a significant upgrade. Because you think about when people say, oh, I just need to be on social media to keep up with my kids or to keep up with my
Mhm.
long lost relatives or whatever. And so there is this value proposition that has value in its little box, but it's and unfortunately that justifies way more time, way more shaping of desires than it should. So yeah, I don't think I would go so far as to advocate for it yet, like personally, to say that that's that we should. I think that the downside thing that still goes along with all the technology is that it shapes our behaviors and expectations in ways that I guess we can't just say that. You can't just say any technology is good or bad
Mhm.
without it considering it in the context of an entire Christian life.
Yeah.
And in surrender to Christ, which is the first biblical practice, and as a surrendered Christian and surrendered to Christ, is social media good for me? For me, God, is in any form. For some people, maybe yes. For other people, maybe no. Even like having a smartphone, like for some people, having a filtering service or an accountability service on there is effective. For other people, they'll get around it no matter what happens. And so maybe they just need to not have a smartphone. In surrender to Christ, we have to be willing to do that. So I would just say that without, that's why I wouldn't necessarily say, oh yeah, everybody should go out and do this. I would only say, do what God leads you to do.
Yeah.
In humility and in genuine surrender and willingness to, with open hands, like as you said, Josh, earlier about fasting, are you willing to give it up? If you're not willing to give it up, then it probably owns you and controls you and is an idol in your life. And I could never not have a TikTok account. What, really?
Well, I promise you can.
You can, and you'll be grateful once you get once you get through the withdrawals. You'll be grateful.
Yeah.
And you'll start hearing God's voice again.
Think about how long society functions just fine with all those things.
Oh,
It's so hard to think about. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, as I'm saying this statement and other statements like it that I've said on this episode, I'm not impervious to this, but I'm almost speaking at myself at the same time, because I realize like it's a very real thing. I don't want to get ahead of where we're at here, but I know in the key takeaway, you mentioned this verse in Jeremiah 6. You know which one I'm talking about. That was what came to my mind about how like we've always got along without this stuff before. We can still do it today. Mm-hmm. Like you're saying, there is some value propositions to it, but I guess speak a little bit to that verse in Jeremiah and what it means, like how it really shapes this whole discussion.
Yeah, it's such a good it does encapsulate what I'm trying to say in so many ways. It's Jeremiah 6:16. It says, "Thus says the Lord, stand by the ways plural, and see and ask for the ancient paths where the good way is, and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls." And so rest for your souls, what does that sound like? It sounds like Jesus in who said, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest."
Yeah.
He's quoting Jeremiah 6:16. Why? Because we have this ability to stand by the ways plural. So look at these ways, look at the possible options. But what does that require? It requires this objectivity, this pulling back, not going along. What does that sound like? Intentionality. Evaluate these things. Should I go down this road or not? And ask God, what are the ancient paths? And this word path, I go through in my book, is this idea of, it's this Hebrew word called derek. I think I'm saying that right. And it's one translation can be habits. The way, Jesus said, "I am the way and the truth and the life." The way, sometimes we just look at that as like the way to heaven, the way to salvation, which is true, but it's way more than that. The way, like as you are going on your way, what are you doing? You're putting one foot in front of the other. You're doing things habitually, constantly, every day. Those are your ways. Those are your paths. Look for what are the ancient paths? These are the paths that are good, that lead to the good way that God has for us. So look for that way and then walk in it. Develop your habits, develop your whole lifestyle. Everything you do should be going down that good way, the good way that God has for you, and you'll find rest.
Yeah. I mean, we could dissect that so much, but you're talking about the ways and how that can also be translated into habits. Think about how your brain forms habits, like the addictedness that we're talking about here. It grooves those channels. You can physically see, like the really strong addictions. There's pathways in your brain being dug. It's amazing.
Good. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. That's exactly right. And yeah, the more that whole brain science stuff is just a whole nother show, right? It's like, but yeah, we are being shaped. And by the way, the younger, the kids, like their brains are developing.
Breaks my heart.
I'm driving here to this interview, and I'm going down went down a residential street to get here, and there's two kids on Razor scooters. Both kids have a phone.
Oh, man.
Riding the scooter in the street.
It's painful.
Both two kids. So you can just imagine, I mean, they're probably like, say, 11 or 12 years old. So mom said, "Go out and play." They're going out and playing, but they're addicted to their phone. They're so addicted they can't even be on a scooter together.
Yeah, imagine anything else that a child could get addicted to. Parents would be like, "Oh, no, like it would be immediate," but somehow we have disconnected the addiction. The average person does not think about what it is doing to a child.
Right. We bought into the lie that my kid will be behind if I don't give him this particular screen.
Yeah.
All of his friends have it.
Yes.
Oh, Lord have mercy. It will be, I keep saying in 20 years, it'll be like, like we think about what people did. They did bloodletting,
I agree.
When George Washington died by bloodletting because they used leeches to, you gave your kids a intentionally addictive device.
Yeah.
All of them. And,
I was watching an episode the other day of a show it was a comedy show from the 90s. And, they're going to a restaurant and there's just all these people smoking at tables. Because I remember as a kid, I know I'm the younger one of the three here, but I remember as a kid, very little, but going into a restaurant and then the person at the hostess or whatever would be like, smoking or non.
Right. Oh,
but it's so crazy, especially for younger people to think of that nowadays. They smoked in restaurants. How did you ever, how did you do that? But I think you're right. I think time will reveal. And people will be looking back at this time and say, "How did they not see it?"
Right. Yeah. And we don't. We look back at things like Nazi Germany. How could they have all gone along?
Yeah.
Well, they propaganda at the end of the, and it's the same here. It's the same. It's my child will be left behind, and no, they will not be if you And now, as I speak, every time I speak and talk about this, I'm not condemning. There's no condemnation.
Sure.
There's no, and my book is very full of grace. I've made so many mistakes. I have so many. The reason I could write a book is because I've made so many mistakes. I've learned a whole bunch of stuff. My favorite parenting advice, all my kids hear me say this, is that is to apologize. I'm sorry that I screwed up this, so apologize. But so anyway, all that to say, if you're a parent listening to this, you didn't know. You were unintentional.
Yeah.
Now you know, or at least you're starting to get a glimmer. And if you start believing, maybe you check out some resources that I'm sure we'll be listing on the show notes here. One of my favorite for parenting is called ScreenStrong.org, ScreenStrong.org. And they're all about kids and screens, and a wonderful path to, again, graciously help you unplug, help you give your kids superpowers by giving them back their creativity and their attention span and their imagination and their childhood.
Yeah.
Right. And by giving them the brain that you want them to have, they're not going to be left behind. Cats and 2-year-olds can learn how to use social media. Right. And your kids are not, in fact, if anything, if your kids are not the tech elites. Is there a soapbox in here? I'm standing on a soapbox. Sorry.
Keep going. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
If the elites of technology send their kids to non-technology schools, they do not use. Steve Jobs' kids did not have an iPad.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs' kids did not.
I think Bill Gates is similar too.
Bill Gates and Bill and Melinda Gates delayed adoption of smartphones in their family much longer than most people do. They know.
That should raise some eyebrows.
Doesn't it?
Really should.
Don't get high on your own supply is what I say. That's the quote I have in my book. They know. They know the cardinal rule of drug dealers. They don't, so we should know this. And so, I just beg and plead parents to get yourself, like my book is to us, to the adults. We need to be clean. We can't say, do as I say, not what I do doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's never worked. So we got to get free so we can help them get free.
Yep.
But do it. Get free so you can help them get free.
And recognize that you are enslaved. I feel like that's such a hard point for even Christians to come to.
Truly is. True, because we don't realize it, and especially when everybody else is doing it. When we're all enslaved, all of us.
Yes.
And only except the weird ones like me. Like
this is why I feel like I need to say this. I feel like this is why we're at a table right now with 3 guys. We're all passionate about this because we've all personally experienced it.
That's right.
We're not pointing the finger like you were just saying earlier, Doug, at other people. We've seen the damage even probably in our own personal lives and those closest to us.
Truly.
So that is where it comes from. It's not a condemnation. Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that your book did a great job of that as well. You don't get the feeling that you're condemning anybody. You're laying it out. Actually, you talk about the 6 positive postures of evaluation. Okay, I'll go through them. And you can maybe kind of elaborate on them. The first one, okay, so talk a little bit before I get into this. What is the position that I'm in just before I engage in the positive postures of evaluation? I've understood that I had a problem.
Yes. Well, this is setting up the process of being ready to see if you have a problem. This is in the chapter on evaluating your life. And the process of writing this book, I prayed every morning. Basically, I was pray every morning over the process and then start writing, right? And there were many times, by the grace of God, on the opposite side of the spiritual warfare that I faced, there was times when I just had to pull over the car. I'm like, that is such a good idea. Thank you, Lord. This in particular, I still remember the day I pulled over and wrote down the 6 postures of evaluation, because that was like, wow, I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
And so if there's anything really good in this book, it's not me. It's God.
Yeah. Praise God.
But, by any means.
The very first posture of a positive posture of evaluation, grace.
Right. Grace.
Have grace for yourself.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. You've got to be gracious to yourself. It's not this that's part of the reason we don't even want to ask the question, because we'll start feeling ashamed. And, when we sin, we should feel guilty, but not ashamed, not like, I am bad. You've done a bad thing. But you didn't know.
Yeah.
So you have to be gracious. You have to say, you know what? I didn't know. Lord, have mercy. I mean, if my list is long, but as far as the east is from the west,
Indeed.
Right.
you've got to trust that. It applies to you.
Mhm.
It doesn't just apply to other people. It applies to you yourself. And so, yeah, be gracious.
And
Be willing to be gracious.
And I'm counting on it every day.
Me too, man.
Mhm.
Me too.
Yeah.
As far as the east is from the west is a big one.
It is.
You know, because you think about it like, well, I know he died in the past for my sins of the past, but
Mhm.
you know, sometimes it's harder to imagine it as far as the, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
by the way, before you even committed them,
Right.
you know, he was already paying the price for you.
Yes.
And it's like, as far as the east is from the west
Yeah.
is a powerful one in my personal life.
Yeah.
The second part, have patience.
Right.
Small steps cover a great distance.
Right. Right. You've got to be, you can't, the old, you know, you can't eat. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yeah.
You know, many of us have a lot of issues, and God is very patient with us. He's very gracious in, at least how it's worked with me. It's not been God's not saying, Doug, you have 2,000 things that I'm mad at you about. Once you get down to about line 1999, you'll be okay. It's like, no, God says, okay, Doug, work on this. Okay, good job. Now work on this. And then this, and then there's always something.
Mm.
There's always something. So, yeah, be patient and gracious with yourself.
You mentioned it a moment ago. Objectivity, third step. See yourself impartially.
Mhm.
Look at your situation. Are you actually? Is this a problem? When I had originally listened to the book, one of the I didn't like being tracked. I didn't
Right.
like when I had a thought about concert tickets, them showing up in my feed. Right.
Right.
I didn't like that.
Mhm.
But what I really didn't like was the time that I would waste. I would think I have, like you said, 5 minutes.
Mhm.
I'll pick it up, and 20 minutes later, I'm still on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I had to look at that impartially, and say, this is a problem.
Mhm.
Whether it's, nobody, okay, bad content is bad content. We're not talking, not
Right.
necessarily just that,
Right.
but
Yeah.
the fact that I'm looking at it for such a duration of time
Yeah.
that I'm not getting anything
Too much
else.
of any good thing.
Too much of any good thing, even if it's not bad content that I'm looking at.
Mhm.
That was where I had to sort of back away from it and look. And that's what you're talking about with objectivity, right?
Exactly.
Looking, seeing if is this a problem?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to, I say it's kind of like, you know, you look at yourself as if you were studying your friend, you know, if you were, or trying to do an objective science experiment. If, you know, what is this person doing? Even if the person happens to be you. Right. And, because you want an objective view. At the end of the day, you want to know how you're really doing. And you can only do that if you're not like, because it's so easy for us to, either be harder on ourselves than we would be to our best friend, or be easier on ourselves. You know,
Yeah.
they sometimes say that we judge ourselves by our motives. We judge other people by their outward actions, or we impute motives on other people. Like they did that because they meant to do blah to me, you know?
Yeah.
You know, so it can go both ways. So yeah, trying to disconnect and just look at it. Okay. I'm spending 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day doing this stuff. What else could I be doing with my life with that time?
Mhm.
Or if I could think, you know, if I did have the ability to be bored for half an hour, what could I create? Or what could my kids benefit from, or whatever, you know? So those are the objective questions that we want people to ask.
Yeah, I'm in the camp of much harder on myself than I am on my friends.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You
me
know,
too.
I definitely am way more critical. I'll go, you fool, you know.
Yeah.
But if you, Joshua, came to me and said you have this exact issue, I would never think to say the things to you that I say to myself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
It's very common.
Openness. Be willing to ask the tough questions.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we start with being gracious, being open, being patient, but you do then end up having to ask yourself, and I lead through it in the book, some hard questions to ask. Like, and those are hard questions like, what else could I be doing? What am I doing? Did you really decide when you were a kid, when I grow up, I'm going to give my data to I'm going to spend 40 hours a week giving my data to the most powerful corporations in the world. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm having fun. I'm watching the latest show. I'm doing la la la. Are you?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the,
Yeah. count the cost for your actions.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I like this one. Step 5, optimism.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you said in the book, you said a negative attitude is a weapon of war in a spiritual war.
It is a weapon of war. Yeah. Yeah.
A negative attitude.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, because, right. So say you do learn that you're spending too much time on X, Y, or Z technology and you're doing more than you think you can. Well, then you can start flogging yourself, like you were just saying. You can start going, or you could go, man, that's so bad. I could never, or whatever. We just can go negative.
Mhm.
But what I encourage people, wow, look, you just discovered this about yourself and you're going to change your life. God's going to be able to do amazing things in you and your family now that you know this about yourself. So yeah, be optimistic. Be optimistic that you can change anything. It doesn't even if you're listening and technology isn't even your thing. You don't have social media. You saw it from the beginning and you never signed up. You're not addicted to video games. You're not addicted to streaming video. Great, but you probably have something else. We all do.
Yeah.
We all have something that leads us astray. And so just be positive that. And why do we even have hope? Can we do it in ourselves? No, we have to, by the grace of God. This is a Christian book. It's the only story I have is because Jesus gives us the power to be able to overcome. He died to give us the power to overcome whatever he wants us to overcome.
Yeah. Amen.
The last part of this, restraint, which I thought holds hands with patience,
Mhm.
right? It's sort of, you're saying, in the book, you sort of say, I'm going to paraphrase, if you give up everything all at once and go cold turkey, you could potentially make mistakes and fall deeper because you'll sort of say, this is not worth it. I might as well just jump in with both. I might as well just, let the pendulum swing back a little harder than it was before. So not to use that as an excuse to go break rules or do whatever, but just to say like you were saying earlier, work on this today.
Yes.
Tomorrow, work on this other thing. Let's
Right.
take this, like I say, as I said before, small steps cover a great distance.
They do.
Is that what you're getting at with restraint? I felt that's what you were saying.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want people to jump in and say, okay, now I have a list of 10 things. Let's do them all today. Let's do it. Okay, kids, we're throwing out every screen in the house and we're going to become Amish or whatever. No, it's not. I don't have anything against Amish people. I love Amish people. I'm not good. They make wonderful furniture and then great food. And that's great. But all I'm saying is, yes, be careful to understand not only are you asking God to help you understand what you need to change, but ask him for the pace.
Mm-hmm.
Ask him for now again, if you are doing, pornography or gambling or, illegal activity or immoral activity, that's a different thing. What I'm talking about is general benign, general screen addiction that wouldn't fall into a directly sinful category. Those kind of things, I say, you've got to put up bigger fences and do more things to say, when God says stop, and do whatever you have to do. So if things are in your life that are doing that, I'm in this context, it's restraint about the other things we've been talking about, right? The general use of social media, the general use of other technologies that are just wasting our time, not that are like leading us down paths of sin.
Yeah. That's, I think, more what appealed to me even the first time that I heard the book, because it wasn't just about bad content.
Right.
It's not the content. It cuts more to the root of the problem.
Yes.
It is this whole, they don't really care if you're consuming bad content.
That's right. Bad content works really well. So there's a lot of
it works, but
right.
yeah.
But it doesn't have to. It can just be cat videos, or it can just be, the latest celebrity gossip or whatever, or sports scores or whatever. It can be all those things. It can be it can be politics. All those,
Oh yeah.
Especially, right? Election year coming. Beware.
Oh yeah, and gloves are off, and it's we've proved that you don't have to. Yeah, that's again, like as you said, it's maybe another conversation for
right.
another episode. Sometimes I hear people say why they can't do things to take their health more seriously. They'll say, "I could never run a mile," or they'll say, I could never give up nachos. And I think
That's
to myself,
no.
let's not be ridiculous. But what? Yeah. But what I often think, especially around that topic, is this person definitely could do that. They definitely could make the change they need to make. I didn't think I could do those things, and I'm nobody from nobody. You know what I mean? And I can do I take my health more seriously. I can do things now that I couldn't do before, like particularly around around the subject of running, right?
Yeah.
You must feel that way about people all the time. I mean, maybe in your family or your friend circles or whatever, people saying, well, I could never give up Facebook, you know, or I could never give up Netflix, you know. I mean, at Christmas, do you have like a hard time do you have to just kind of bite your tongue and go, yeah, it's okay, you know?
Oh, yes.
It happens a lot.
It does. It does. It does because, because I really try to live by the idea that I only give advice when I'm asked for it.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard to do.
It does. You know, people don't want to know, and they might not want to know it from me, especially if they're closer to me, you know, because who are you, you know? So I end up, so that can definitely be a thing, but yeah, we can, even those sayings, I could never, that's an identity statement. That's a statement about who you are.
Yeah.
That's a powerful statement. And so I talk about that in the book, as far as like the things you say about yourself end up becoming true because you end up living by them.
Yep.
I am like this. I am not like that. Really? This is your life. This is the one life we've been given, and you can, and you should. And if Jesus is the King, and we are His loyal and allegiant servants, we don't have anything that we can say. The old saying of, I really love the saying of, no, Lord is not a sentence that a Christian can say. It's either no or it's Lord. Right?
Together.
Yeah. You can't, if you say it together, then He's not Lord. And if He's Lord, you can't say no. It's yes. Yeah. And so we have to be open to that, and you can, and who knows where you might, what that freedom might open up for you.
Yeah. That struggle you're referring to there, Doug, where people say, I could never do this, or the limitations, they're viewing this issue or potential issue as being bigger than, you know, God's ability to help you overcome it.
That's right.
I think often in this subject I try to bring up, and I think it goes right along with what we talk about every episode in Life and Faith, and that is there's a part in the Bible where it talks about the children of Israel that they were going into the promised land. They sent the spies in there to spy out the land. And the report that the 10 spies came back with was, we are not able. That they said they're not able. And so they were causing the masses to believe that, like you're saying, believe that lie. And it sometimes it takes a few of us willing to stand up in the midst of it and saying, no, we are well able.
Yes.
Like the two good ones did there. So it's difficult, but you know, I can appreciate, you know, what you said about, I try not to offer any advice unless somebody's
right.
asking for it. It's so hard.
Well,
Yes.
and this, like you had said earlier, there was a whole life that existed before this.
Yes.
And we were super happy.
Right.
And we still got to watch football games and hang out,
Right.
and you know what I mean? We still enjoyed it wasn't like, you know, living in darkness, never to see the light. I mean, it was awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and do you know what I mean? It's like, of course you can do this. You could. I don't want to live in a world where I couldn't refrain from something for, say, 30 days.
Yeah.
Right? Or to say, like, I could never give up this phone completely for, say, a month. Okay, let alone, like, having a new lifestyle of not having this technology in front of me at all, but just, okay, I could possibly give it up entirely. Well, maybe I don't want to do that, but I don't want to be so beholden to it that I can't put it down for at least a month.
Yeah. You
Sure.
never know until you try.
And that's what I'm saying. I think, especially around the nature of physical health, because that's what I kind of know, I go, yes, you definitely can. It might seem impossible. It might seem hard. It might seem improbable, but it's definitely possible. You definitely can. And I was thinking about that because I hear it a lot and I just kind of nod, you know, And I thought, you must get that too, because you're so thinking about these kinds of things, and you must see it everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Like the kids on the Razor scooters, right? You
Right.
didn't
I
pull
want
the
to
car
pull over
and
and
go, where's your mother?
I was tempted.
Yeah.
But, so when we do in this conversation, we do talk an awful lot about giving things up, and there may be that, but what I really encourage people to think about is not just that, is to more importantly, less important what you're saying no to, and more important what you're saying yes to. You have to have a better yes.
Replace it. Yeah.
Replace it. Yeah. What are you here for? What's God calling you to do? What could your life, and like you talk about even physical health, you don't talk about, man, I'm really looking forward to giving up nachos or whatever. But man, if I could run a mile, whoa, what would that be like? Or if I felt like if I woke up in the morning and I wasn't in pain because of X, Y, or Z, whoa, what would that feel like? Like that, those casting that vision. I have a chapter on vision casting and a chapter on purpose for those reasons. Because for me personally, it's the purpose that keeps me going. It's the knowledge that God's called me to something, and I don't want anything to get in the way of that. And I know from the past what those things did to slow me down and to keep me from fulfilling what God gave me to do. And so that's it's the better yes. Cast that vision for yourself. Cast that vision for your family.
You said in the book, okay, so what advice? Okay, so I'm the parent, and now I have the kid, and I've given the kid the smartphone, and we've grown up in it, and we've been here for so many years. Okay, now we're ingrained, now we're in the midst of it. What do you say to people who are in that, who now need to, with a long enough lever, move the earth?
Yeah.
Right.
What do you say because I'm looking at it as a dad.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, I have this kid I'm kind of responsible for.
Yep. Yeah.
What do you say to those guys who's already in it and already made mistakes?
Well, again, I would say I've made mistakes. We've made a lot of mistakes. We've all made mistakes. So again, you approach it with grace. It's a big ship to turn. Understand that it is a big ship to turn. But that you do need to turn it. Like once you learn what it's doing to your child, what it's doing to their brains, that is something you do need to do. But you need to do it together. And so, there's age dependent things. There's other factors, but, so many times I've heard so many stories of where kids are, the things they're dealing with, the anxiety, depression, the pornography use, the things there's so much that's coming. And the last thing people want to do is take away the screen. So, but it should really be the first thing. So, if this is the first time you're hearing this idea and you're like, when I speak about this in groups of people, you can hear the air just go out of the room like,
so
what?
radical.
Yeah. What are you saying? What? Heart palpitations, the AED needs to come out. But, So again, screenstrong.org has a 7-day and a 30-day challenge. And they have, so I would lead you there and say, all right, don't try to say we're taking this away forever. Let's just see what happens for 7 days. And they'll lead you through 7 days of not only what to not do, but what to do. And so there's a lot of replacement of what has to happen in the family to make it possible to be a screen-free environment. So there is a path to doing that. But then what happens is even the kids. So the testimonies I've heard of kids where their parents did this, it's phenomenally beautiful. It's things like, there's anger and withdrawal at the beginning. Expect that. But then there's, whoa, I didn't realize. Thank you. They're waiting for that. They're waiting for someone to set a boundary for them.
Yes.
All their friends are doing it. None of them are happy doing it. That's anxiety, depression. These are not happy things.
Yep.
Like the things people aren't accidentally like, gosh, I feel more loving after I spend an hour on Facebook. Gosh, I just want to do altruistic things now. I just really want to love people more. It's not that, right? It's the opposite. Or I just feel so much better about myself. Man,
people are tired, they're stressed.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. They'll thank you. They'll rise up. I told this to my wife so many times. Proverbs 31 says, they will rise up and call you blessed.
Yeah.
Not today. not next week probably. But when they're adults, man, you made a hard call there that time we had that conversation and you started turning the ship. Thank you.
And that's the purest form of love right there, is doing the things that are difficult.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to your children.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Countercultural. But again, better, yes. And so, yeah, starting that conversation, you know what? I'm learning some things. I realize I messed up on this. And we're going to try to get through this together. And we're going to start to do some things. And it might be hard at first, but you're going to thank me for it later. And we'll get through this together. And yeah.
We talked last night in men's group about how fathers react and deal with things, and some fathers are it was like absent and then angry and then another alliteration. But you were just reminding me of that because my reaction is always to be angry about the situation.
Sure.
Our son likes to dig his heels in.
Sure.
And that makes me angry. And that's how, I was sort of raised as like, you rule by this sort of wall of like, if you upset me, I'm going to upset your life.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it hasn't really worked.
No.
You know what I mean? So in this area of technology and sort of technology addiction, as dads, what do you see a different role for dads than you do for moms in this situation?
Sure, absolutely. Well, because first of all, I would say, so I speak at homeschool conferences, and and oftentimes there are more moms there than dads. That ought not be. So to one thing, I'd say they're more absent than. So this one thing that just etched into my brain that a young woman came up to my table afterwards, and she's like, okay, and because what the topic is parenting and screens and kids, a countercultural way or whatever. And she said, yeah, okay, I get it about the kids, but what do I do about my husband? He's addicted to video games. He comes home from work and he plays video games until 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And she's crying, and she's beautiful. And she's this really wonderful Christian woman who's trying to raise her family by herself because her husband, and she's telling a stranger in a strange place.
Yeah.
It still breaks my heart to think about that. She's telling some strange guy in this that she's never met before that her husband has abandoned her.
Yeah.
Because, so don't be, deal with your own stuff, Dad. So first of all, Dad needs to deal with his stuff and be the example. Because again, it's not do as I say, not what I do, or do what I, the other way around. But anyway, so starting, assuming you are then changing, but so say you are that way, but then you say, son, I've been screwing up a lot.
Yeah.
And
huge.
We together need to find freedom. And so we together are going to do this. And that would be a path. So, but dads, I'd say call dads out to leadership.
Yes.
And that leadership is a self-sacrificial servant leadership. You go first, you take the hits, you protect mom, you back mom up. Mom's not the bad guy. You are.
Yeah.
Mom's, Dad's got it. Dad's been learning this thing, and I don't know about it either, but give mom the break. Mom gets good cop, bad cop. You're the bad cop. But not an angry cop, right?
Yeah.
Just like, but you're the parent. You are the parent. You're not their friend today. You'll be their great friend when they're older.
Yes.
All right. But it's tough. It's a tough job being dad. I've been dad. I am still dad. You never stop being dad. Best job, hardest job.
Yeah.
But you do become, that's one of our cohorts in the men's group will say, I was smart until he was 12, and then I was the biggest idiot, and then she turned 25, and then I became smart again. So
That's exactly
you gain
right.
that back. You get that back at some point.
You definitely do. You definitely do.
You're touching on so many things that I personally in my own life is so passionate about. Like not just for myself, but like I want to so badly to help other families, other dads specifically.
Yeah.
So rather than me continuing on this thought, and because I could go forever on that, I just want to say yes and amen to everything you just said about dads. Like the call to leadership is so important.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you say in the book that there are 4 steps. We already did the 6 positive postures of evaluation, but there are 4 steps to the path to repentance. Okay, you remember what I'm talking about, of course.
Yeah, this is in the chapter on repentance.
This comes after the
surrender.
After the surrender, right?
Right.
Okay. First one is knowledge.
Right.
How would you summarize that?
Well, so repentance is learning about something you need to change, right? So if you don't know, then you can't change. So knowledge is the first step. Is like understand that not only are you doing something you need to change, and here's what it is. And so then that does require the openness.
Which is the second part.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
The openness is
This
go ahead.
openness is the willingness to change.
Hmm.
This is what we were talking about earlier about, if he's the king, again, we're talking as Christians in a Christian, like this is not a psychological self-help type of thing. This is
Right.
Jesus is Lord. He's told me that I am not being X, Y, or Z like I should be. And I need to be, yes, Lord, I need to be open to saying yes. Okay. I need
Yeah.
to say, you're right.
And that's the third part, agreement.
Yes.
I agree that this is
Right. I'm open to hearing that I need to change. And then, yes, you're right. I need to change. You are Lord. I surrender. I will change. I'll do this. I will take this out of my life, or I will repent is the turning around in a different direction and going a different way.
which would be the fourth part, the action
Thank you. Yeah.
of actually doing it.
That's right. So then you do it, right? So you are open. And so again, we've been talking about a lot of things during this episode, and so something maybe have landed. Maybe you're feeling God talk to you a little bit about some area in your life, and you're like, okay, well, now I know that. Am I open to hearing that might really apply to me? And then if so, oh yes, Lord, you're right. Then you do take that action and you take that step, whatever that step needs to be.
Well, you had the opportunity when writing this book to just make it a psychological thing.
That's
you
right.
could have said plenty about this technology device is
Mhm.
turning your brain into a hamster wheel.
Right.
You could have said
Yeah.
you could have, and
Right.
I loved that you said, no, this, whether you're not a believer or whatever, it is a spiritual problem.
That's right.
And it
And I had
has
recommend. Yeah, I was told I could probably sell more books if I didn't make it a Christian book like that. I could probably gotten a more, mainstream publisher or whatever like that because I have a unique story to tell. The problem is I didn't have a non-Christian story to tell for myself. I can only write for what works for me. It wasn't there are psychological aspects, right? There are, there are right ways of thinking. There are psychology. I've benefited greatly from good Christian counseling. I'm not poo-pooing psychological things in general.
Sure. Yeah.
Huge fan. Do it. Go to counseling. Go to marriage counseling if you need to. I've done that. It's great. But at the end of the day, what works in this area for me has been surrender, real life, whole life, 100% all in surrender. And then when I stop doing that, I have to do it again. And
Yeah.
the old saying of the problem of a living sacrifice from Romans 12:1 is he keeps crawling off the altar.
Yeah.
And
Put it back
we
on.
can totally do that, right? So and the repentance process is a cycle. It's God doesn't present you with the 2,000 things you need to repent from. It's this today, and then tomorrow, or whatever, it might need to be something else. So yeah, it's an ongoing, but yes, this is a real life Christian solution that I can tell you if you do it, it will change your life.
Because it is the problem, is a spiritual problem,
At the root, it is.
right? It's
Yep.
maybe it's like for you, it's about value, like you were talking about with the Instagram situation, right? And it's like you don't find your value in the eyes of the beholder. It's value in the king, right?
Exactly.
As he sees it, right?
Right.
But it is at the root a spiritual problem.
Yep.
And it has a spiritual solution.
That's right.
And I just loved it.
100%.
I loved it hearing that part of it because I don't think, I guess I assumed it would be in there when I began listening, but I didn't. That was really like where it started hitting a home run for me personally, and where I went, this is it. Like I felt like, okay, I can delete all that stuff. I think that might have even been when I let you know that I had listened to it. I think that might have been the first thing I said was like, hey, I deleted my Facebook today.
Yeah, I know. Like, whoa. That's
I
amazing.
didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
And I was like, the people who are still my friends will still be my friends. And like, I think maybe I had 2 negative interactions between all of it. But the majority, like I tell people, like I'm friending people in real life now.
Yeah.
There you
That's
go.
one of my favorite phenomenon is when somebody is getting off for a time or permanently or temporary from Facebook. It's like an airport where it's like now announcing a departure and departing from Facebook. You don't have
Right.
to announce it. Just do it. Go for it.
Right. Yes.
I'm not gonna. You won't know what I've been eating lately.
Yeah. Now we're gonna miss out.
You're gonna miss out on the steak that I'm about to eat. One last point I want to ask you about. I really liked you said, you know what else? Your kids don't need a smartphone. There is no upside to the smartphone.
Yeah.
No upside.
That's a bold statement, isn't it, man? That's a bold statement. That is a bold, unpopular statement, but that is a scientifically / practically informed statement. The more I learn, the more I know that is true.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that if you will think and meditate on that subject, you will be grateful that you adopt that. But it's significant. It's very countercultural, very unpopular.
Yeah.
But they don't need a pack of cigarettes either.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Has the same effect.
Imagine everything that's at a young person's fingertips in a smartphone. Now, if you could piece those out into individual items, physical items, you would not hand those to a developing child.
No, you would
So,
not.
but when they're packaged in this friendly-looking device that's trendy,
Mhm.
changes things for people. It's amazing.
And when everybody else is doing it,
Right.
That's the real interesting thing. As as parents, we always hear the thing about if Johnny jumped off the bridge, would you jump too? And you're like, well, no, but we're all doing that with technology. We're Johnny has a smartphone. Johnny's 10 years old or 8 years old, and he's got an iPhone 14 or whatever, and I want one too. Well, I guess I can only afford to get you an Android. Well, no, you can afford to get them nothing.
Yeah.
But again, why? What are we here for?
Mhm.
And what Johnny's parents just don't know that, or we're doing something different here, and because you are here for another purpose. Again, in my book I talk about things like what future student who has the intellectual chops to cure cancer is instead curating her Instagram feed. She does not going to have the attention span to learn molecular biology and cure cancer. What's the next Mozart who could write the next amazing, music? He's playing Fortnite instead and trying to win, right? But he has the chops to do that. And there's so many other things like that our kids are missing out on. They're missing out on their childhood. They're on a Razor scooter with a phone in their face. People. And why are they doing that? The title of my book, Unintentional. They didn't mean to do that. They didn't know that when you gave them that phone, that grandma and grandpa, parents couldn't afford it. So grandma and grandpa bought it. They're looking at porn on a phone you got them for Christmas, Grandpa.
Yeah. People need to hear that.
They need to hear that.
Yeah.
They're doing, not my kid. Oh.
Yeah. The statistics are so high.
Yeah.
The odds are it is your grandchild. It is your child.
It is.
Yeah.
And again, not because they're some bad kid.
Right.
Because the industry is against them. They're manipulating them.
It's too big for a young person to escape. It's too big. The parents have to step in and help.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they want you to.
Yes.
They want you to do that. They need you to be the bad guy so they can say to their friends, man, Mom won't let me play Fortnite. Dad won't let me play Fortnite because he says it hurts my brain.
Yeah.
Give them that freedom to do that.
It's not always about what they seek out. It's often about what seeks them out.
100%. Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. All the mistyped domain names, they're looking for Barbie.com and they type in something Barbie.net or whatever. And it's whatever,
Something bad.
Yes.
something bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. They mistype, all the misspellings. Oh yeah. It's a trap. They're seeking you out. They're seeking it out, and they're going to seek it out. The industry is going to seek them out anyway. Let's not help them.
Yeah. Well, I love that idea too, because I think a lot of parents do feel that they can get to that common ground with me on this topic more easily if I take sort of the shame of their little Johnny out of it.
Yes.
And say, listen, maybe Johnny does break rules, but maybe he doesn't, and maybe the things that do break rules seek Johnny out.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's really the big. That's really and most people can wrap their minds around that concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's, you send them down into a dangerous neighborhood.
Yeah.
There's a chance that they'll come back okay,
Mm-hmm.
but you just wouldn't let them do that.
No.
Because of all the dangers that exist, and yet you'll give them a phone,
Right.
or say
Yep.
it's okay because there's a chance you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah.
So with that, I just want to kind of close. Did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
Good.
All good? Okay, I'm going to just 3 quick things here just to kind of sum up everything we've been talking about. Your book is called Unintentional: How Screens Secretly Shape Our Desires and How You Can Break Free. To summarize it, the book is called Unintentional. Being intentional is the path out.
That's right.
How? Just to summarize it.
You become intentional by first becoming aware of the situation in your family, in your life, and deciding that, again, as a Christian, in surrendered obedience to Christ, you're going to intentionally follow him instead and decide what role technology has in your surrendered life to Christ, and go wherever he leads you. Be open to whatever he asks you to do, one step at a time. Going in, as we talked about Jeremiah 6:16, I mean, that's my summary verse, is look for the good way and walk in it day by day in surrendered obedience to him. And you'll wake up in some X amount of weeks, months, years ahead and go, wow, I'm a different person now.
Yeah.
I'm closer to God now. My family is in a better place now. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be worth it. And you can do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything that us, as Josh and Dan, or our listeners can specifically be praying for you or your ministry? I don't know if you consider it a ministry.
Oh, yeah.
Or
100%. Yeah.
Is there anything that we could be praying for you about specifically, or our listeners can be praying about for you?
Thank you for asking that. I appreciate that. It's in many ways, I'm just getting started in doing this. I mean, I have been doing it for several years, and it's done well, but I have a lot more I would love to do, and I'm just always seeking God's will and the stamina and strength to do it. And so I would just appreciate for strength and wisdom to continue to be able to reach the people who God would have me to serve, and the ability to do it. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And last question I have for you just is, how can people get your book? Where can we send people?
Yeah. So the easiest way is my website is That Doug Smith. So THAT, That Doug Smith, or That Doug Smith, thatdougsmith.com. So, because Doug Smith's a common name. So if you go to thatdougsmith.com, you can find a link to Unintentional there, and the audiobook as you listen to it's there as well. So yeah, love to, and you can find ways to contact me. I'll have questions. If anything, you want to push back, you want more details, you want to, whatever you want to do, you can contact me. I'd love to have the conversation.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for being here, Doug.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Life and Faith podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Stay up to date on all our episodes, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.